Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Trey, and let's talk about female characters. And I'm talking about in comic books and why I believe that they don't succeed as well as they should. There are some factors, but I'm talking about, like, normally now in current comic books landscapes is why don't female characters, succeed? And I believe the answer is constant reboots. If you guys notice, a lot of female characters are always constantly being rebooted or updated for quote unquote modern sensibilities all the time. There's always a character. There's always a character from DC and Marvel that is like, oh, we need to reboot them and stuff like that. We need to change their costume. We need to make them better or whatever, as if what was wrong with them and what was working. Because that's another thing I find out too, is that they'll change a female character when it's actually working before they, instead of keeping it. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. You do touch the male characters, but the male characters don't usually, change their origins so many times. But yet female characters, for instance, you got Wonder Woman. She's been through about 4 different origins, and it's never the same. There's a base for it, but it's never the same. Then, of course, let's not forget her twin sister, Nubia. 3 different origins for her. The same thing goes with Donna Troy. The same thing that goes with Wonder Girl. Supergirl, there's how many Supergirls we want to go through? Besides Kara Zor-El, we have Karen Starr, Power Girl. We have Sorrel. We have Linda Danvers. You get what I'm saying? There are so many of those female characters. Black Canary's origin's been changed from what it used to be. Like, they're always trying to figure out some stuff, and I think that's the problem. Captain Marvel been rebooted for so many years, it's not even funny. They just now been able to keep the character, going. Comic book wise, even though the comic book isn't in no kind of top anything, but because they're not pushing it anymore, that they just keep it going because they need to keep the license going. I always kind of find it interesting when, you pick up these female characters. They want you to read these female characters, and yet they keep changing them. Same thing with Harley Quinn. Even villains get changed so many times, it's not even funny. To the point where you're just like, okay, so then what did you think was going to happen? Why do you think people should continually to read these female characters if you're constantly rebooting their origins or changing them? Oh, and another new thing too with the female characters is you keep trying to make them bisexual or lesbians in general too. That's another thing that just makes absolutely no sense. And then you try to make them replacements for the male characters instead of just, instead of just making them like a female version inspired by the male character. You're like, no, we need to completely make this female character better than the man. And it just doesn't work. It does not work. And that's been like something that's a problem with female characters in the comic books in general, because I've been noticing this lack of, because they always be talking about, oh, we need to keep these female characters or whatever, but the female characters that people do like, you keep constantly rebooting and changing them. I think it's more so with DC than Marvel. Marvel just makes them more boring than anything else. Most of the popular female characters in Marvel are actually just on teams, honestly, and they get a lot of their character development throughout the team books, which is fine, which is definitely fine by me. But when they have an opportunity to put them in solo books, they give them a half-ass story, and you just be like, that's it. That's what I mean. Like, a lot of the X-Men female characters, they've had little runs, but their runs are just so lackluster because nobody's like trying, as if like, well, you know, we can make them individuals on the X-Men, but we can't seem to figure out how to make them individuals when it's time for a solo book, right? Then another thing is you're always trying to please, you know, modern feminist sensibilities or whatever you want to call it by taking classic costumes that show off the women's physique, that shows them off in a, you know, in a beautiful dynamic way, and, you know, damn near sexy if you want to damn call it. And then y'all, you know, y'all make them look butt ugly, or try to make them look like men, or put them in costumes that cover them up so much where it looks more impractical to be covered up than anything else, just because you don't want the characters to be sexy. Then you try to cut their hair all the time. I don't know what's up with that, but that definitely needs to damn stop too. Is you guys try to think that it's cute to try to give them some haircut that doesn't even, you know, match. Some characters can do a little cool haircut, but, you know, a lot of times they be trying to give them this like butch haircut where most of their hair gone, and, you know, is that a boy or a girl? Because they put on a costume where their titties don't exist anymore. And, you know, I know somebody's going to be like, you know, well, we really shouldn't be paying attention to that stuff. But comics is a visual media. So, yeah, actually, you want the women to look fucking good. Because if they don't look good, then what's the point of reading them? You know what I mean? You can't expect people to read Captain Marvel and Carol looking like a darn dude. I'm sorry. Back in the day, Carol had, you know, sorry to say, she had a C to a D cup and Galapagos thighs. She had birthing hips, okay? And she had a very athletic body, a very athletic physique. And yet, y'all change it. Y'all take that away from her. And now she look like a straight boy. And you wonder why, like, damn, I wonder why we can't get characters to say it. Or you take characters like She-Hulk, who is unapologetically sexy, and try to desexualize them and try to make them, you know, ugly or whatever, like you do with She-Hulk, like you did with She-Hulk for a time, where, you know, She-Hulk likes to be ugly. She-Hulk don't need to be looking good and sexy. If I want to read Hulk, I will read Hulk. I don't need to look at a burly, strong woman. I really don't. That's unappealing. That's unappealing. And it took y'all a while to learn that lesson. Or Power Girl. Well, we tried to cover her up, but it didn't work because people wasn't reading it. So then we had to bring back the costume that people love. But now, instead, that worked for a while. And now, instead of bringing her back, we're going to just push her out and put her in a title that nobody really cares about. Because, you know, we don't really want people to really see that character, especially when the character used to have a solo run before we rebooted for God knows whatever reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm talking about the reboot, not her solo series, because the solo series was actually pretty interesting, you know, because y'all afraid of titties. You know what I mean? But you want these characters to be successful. Okay, well, in order for them to be successful, you have to make them appealing. Sorry, like it or not, you're going to have to make them look better than that. Or Batgirl. For God's sakes, y'all can't seem to get none of the characters right that's been Batgirl, because you be wanting to bring back Barbara Gordon ass, which, you know, don't make no sense. She's already Oracle, because you guys are ashamed of things that happened to her. Don't even do it. Hey, dumbasses. I swear they'll turn in front of you when you about to come, because you're ashamed of things that happened to her. Yes, there have been things that happen to females in comic books, but at the same time, you have to understand their audience was predominantly male, and predominantly with action stuff, predominantly men read it. And of course, some people say, oh, well, you know, if you make it like this, you can get females. Nah, not necessarily, because 9 times out of 10, which is like a 90% is, most women are not interested in comics. They're not. They're not. As much as it sucks, they don't. They don't. And I'm not saying that there aren't any women. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't any women who don't like comic books. There are plenty of women who do like comic books. But like comic books is a niche thing. Women liking comic books is also a niche thing. And trying to please that just makes no logical sense. Oh, we're bringing in all these female characters that nobody asked for because we want to try to get a young teenage girl audience in a strictly action-based industry. I mean, sure. I mean, you should have captured it. My thing is, if you really wanted to do something like that, you should have captured that audience years ago when you were still doing westerns, romance, and horror stories. Back when that was that peak. But when you stop doing that, you kind of lost that little audience market right there. But the audience that you do have, we do like the female characters. But you guys got to stop rebooting and changing them around, trying to make them less appealing, and stop trying to also make them damn lesbians. Sorry, people want to actually see the female character have a actual male lover. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any LGBT one, but majority of the main characters can't be LGBT. That's just a given. And trying to make that something just doesn't work. Or even this too is another thing too, is where I find out is like, now all of a sudden characters who are females, if they are villainous or not all the way good or whatever, they have this whole thing of victimhood where it's not my fault I'm like this, it's the man's fault. And it's just like, take responsibility. Take some responsibility. That's another thing. If you want people to read these female characters and you want them to take them serious, well, guess what? The female characters are going to have to actually, be responsible for themselves. You know what I'm saying? This whole, it was a man's fault is the reason why I'm like this just doesn't fly with readers because it's disingenuous. Especially if you're trying to do the whole thing. Women don't need no man. Okay, cool, great. If she don't need no man, then she should be able to take responsibilities for her actions. You know what I mean? Because the audience that you're getting is nothing but shippers who want to see characters that they know don't need to be together, but gonna be together anyway. And then it's in the most toxic traits ever too. So I'm just saying, like, I understand there are some people who do like female characters. I like female characters too. Some of my favorite comic book characters are females. But this what they've been doing to female characters lately doesn't, help get people to read the female characters. You're going to have to appeal to a wider audience. And again, like I said, your audience is mostly males. So mostly males who are straight, and they want to see the woman looking sexy. They want to see the woman looking gorgeous, but they want to see the woman, with a significant other that's a male. Because how are you going to inspire people if all the heroes' significant others are females? You know what I'm saying? We got males who are with women, and now we got females who are with females. That doesn't really correlate. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't really work like that. You kind of have to think about it for a bit when you think about that kind of stuff. I would love to see Diana and Steve Trevor all the time. I mean, one of the few female characters who have a love interest or whatever, not trying to say, oh, all of a sudden she's bisexual because they live on an island full of women. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they'll be necessarily lesbians too, because that's not what an Amazon it is, you know what I mean? But, you know, hey, I'm just throwing out, I'm just saying this as a thing where if you kind of really sit down and think about it, a lot of the female characters aren't really doing so well is because of the stupid change, some of the stupid changes that have been made to the characters and trying to make them pro-feminist, which I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But again, understand who your market is and understand who you're trying to get to read your books. Are you trying to get mostly females to read it, or are you trying to get majority to read it? That's all I'm saying, because you have to kind of think like, darn, I want people to read these books, but they're not going to read them if we're sitting up here talking about how terrible men are and all of the female characters are in same-sex relationships. How is that going to appeal to men who are majority of your readers from comics? I'm just saying, manga figured out a way to get people, get females to read books, because they have what they call it, not a shonen, it's not Shonen Jump. It is what they call it. They call it a dojin or something like that. Let me see. Shoujo. Yeah, it is shoujo. So yeah, shoujo. Because you got shoujo and then you got shonen. Shonen is mostly male, action orientated, and then shoujo is mostly female, romantic size, feminine, girly things and stuff like that, and power friendship kind of stuff too. So if they figured out a way to make characters that fit in that role, y'all need to figure out how to do that, but also remember to keep them feminine, keep them beautiful, keep them where even a guy would pick up the book and be like, damn. Because I mean, you know, with shoujo, who's the like most famous female character of all time? That's Sailor Moon. And men was watching the show, men was reading the manga and stuff like that. And most of the main characters were what? Female. And yes, they did have some LGBT characters in there as well, but most of the cast was not. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? And they were romanticizing things. They all had their own significant lovers who were men who they had to rescue a lot or whatever and stuff like that. You got to do something like that if you want to get appealing. But they made sure that they kept the females. That's all I'm saying. But those are my thoughts. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.